In the middle of the North Atlantic lies a small island with almost no natural freshwater and virtually no significant natural resources. Yet more than 60,000 people have chosen to call it home, making Bermuda one of the places with the highest standard of living in the world. What transformed this rock in the middle of the ocean into such a remarkable place to live? Across the vast waters of the Atlantic Ocean, Bermuda appears to be little more than a tiny speck on the horizon. Yet for centuries, thousands of ships managed to find this island, even long before modern maps and navigation systems existed. The first thing that makes Bermuda remarkable is its location. The archipelago lies more than 600 miles off the coast of North America, completely isolated in the middle of the ocean. From the deck of a ship, sailors could hardly see land until they were almost upon it, while dangerous coral reefs remained hidden just beneath the surface. In 1846, Gibbs Hill Lighthouse was built on Bermuda's highest point. It remains one of the few cast-iron lighthouses still standing in the world and became the first sign to passing ships that they were approaching the island. From the top of the tower, its light could reach for dozens of miles across the darkness of the Atlantic. But catching sight of Bermuda did not mean reaching shore safely. Beneath the blue waves lay a maze of coral reefs that brought countless voyages to an abrupt end. The very reefs that protected Bermuda from the force of the open ocean also became deadly traps, turning the surrounding waters into one of the Atlantic's most famous ship graveyards. To understand why so many ships were lost here, we must begin with the natural barrier that surrounds Bermuda. Over the past 4 centuries, the waters surrounding Bermuda have become the resting place of hundreds of shipwrecks from many different eras. Some were merchant vessels carrying spices and sugar from the Caribbean. Others once served in the Royal Navy. Still others were lost during World War II. Each wreck is like a time capsule, locked away beneath the ocean floor. Today, most of these wrecks no longer resemble scenes of disaster. Their steel hulls have gradually been covered by coral, becoming home to groupers, sea turtles, and hundreds of other marine species. Marine biologists regard many of these wrecks as artificial reefs, where new life has emerged from the very remains of tragedy. For archaeologists, however, each ship represents a missing piece of history. Coins, cannons, anchors, and surviving cargo help reconstruct the trade networks that once connected Europe, Africa, and the Americas across the Atlantic. What was once a human catastrophe has become one of the most valuable historical archives on the seafloor. Yet the most intriguing secrets of Bermuda do not lie beneath the ocean. They are hidden deep beneath the very island where people live today. To uncover the answer, we must leave the sea behind and descend into Bermuda's underground world. From above, Cooper's Island appears to be little more than a narrow strip of land extending from Bermuda's southeastern coast. Yet every year, it becomes a vital stopover for thousands of animals completing one of the most demanding migrations on Earth. Its isolation once made Cooper's Island an ideal military base for decades. Human activity severely restricted access to the area, but after the base was closed, nature gradually reclaimed the landscape. Today, it has been restored as a nature reserve, with pristine beaches, salt marshes, and remarkably untouched coastal habitats. What fascinates biologists is not only the beauty of Cooper's Island, but also its position along a transatlantic migration route. Many bird species use Bermuda as a rare resting point after flying thousands of miles across the open ocean. While the surrounding coastal waters provide feeding grounds for green sea turtles, stingrays, and numerous tropical fish. In a place that seems far too small to support such abundant life, coral reefs, seagrass meadows, and shallow coastal waters are connected into a complete ecosystem. This delicate balance has enabled Bermuda to sustain its marine resources, protect its shores, and support human life for centuries. Perhaps the most remarkable thing is not the sheer number of species that arrive at Cooper's Island, but the way an entire ecosystem depends on a small piece of land in the middle of the ocean. If nature made Bermuda's survival possible, it was people who transformed the island into a maritime hub of the Atlantic. Bermuda has no rivers and no natural freshwater lakes. Yet for more than 4 centuries, the island has continued to supply water to tens of thousands of residents. The answer begins with the deep blue pools hidden within Blue Hole Park. At first glance, Blue Hole Park looks like a peaceful lake surrounded by trees and low limestone cliffs. But beneath the surface lies an intricate network of underwater caves connected to limestone chambers formed millions of years ago. Many of the blue holes are far deeper than they appear, and cave explorers are still mapping their hidden passages today. What makes Blue Hole Park unique is the meeting of rainwater and seawater. After each rainfall, fresh water filters through the island's porous limestone and forms a thin layer floating above the saltwater. Geologists call this phenomenon a freshwater lens, a natural reservoir of freshwater that exists just beneath the island's surface. This fragile layer of freshwater not only sustains the underground cave ecosystem but also serves as one of Bermuda's most valuable water reserves. If it is overdrawn or contaminated by seawater intrusion, the balance can be disrupted in a remarkably short time. Because freshwater is so limited, Bermuda cannot rely on vast underground aquifers like those found on large continental landmasses. Instead, nearly every home on the island is designed with stepped white limestone roofs that collect rainwater and channel it into private storage tanks. A solution that seems remarkably simple has become the foundation of life for more than 60,000 residents for centuries. Surrounding Bermuda is not a stretch of sandy shoreline, but a vast ring of coral reefs. They serve both as the shield that has allowed the island to endure the Atlantic and as the cause of countless shipwrecks over the centuries. The reefs were formed by millions of tiny marine organisms accumulating over hundreds of thousands of years. Together, they created an almost continuous barrier around Bermuda, absorbing most of the ocean's wave energy before it reached the shore. Without this natural line of defense, Atlantic storms could have eroded the island far more rapidly. Yet the very feature that protected Bermuda became a deadly hazard for passing ships. Many coral heads lie just beneath the surface, almost invisible when the sea is calm. Before the age of radar and GPS, even a slight navigational error could send a ship's hull crashing into the hidden reefs. Over time, more and more wrecks came to rest on the seabed. Some eventually became artificial reefs, providing a home for schools of fish and new coral gardens growing directly upon the remains of the vessels themselves. The combination of coral reefs, powerful ocean currents, and unpredictable weather has made Bermuda one of the Atlantic's most densely concentrated shipwreck regions. But how many ships have actually been lost beneath these waters? The answer is even more astonishing. Beneath the roads and homes of Bermuda lies a vast maze of caves carved into ancient limestone. Few would imagine that the secret behind the island's survival begins within this underground world. Around 2 million years ago, when sea levels were lower than they are today, rainwater gradually dissolved Bermuda's porous limestone. Over time, this slow process created enormous underground chambers, which eventually developed into an extensive cave system stretching beneath the island. Crystal Cave is one of the most spectacular examples. Inside, the water is so clear that its surface reflects the cave ceiling like a giant mirror. while stalactites continue to grow, one drop of water at a time, over thousands of years. More importantly, these caves help explain how Bermuda has been able to sustain life without natural rivers or freshwater lakes. For centuries, rainwater has filtered through the limestone and accumulated as underground freshwater lenses, supplementing the island's rooftop rainwater collection system. Together, these two sources have enabled tens of thousands of residents to thrive on an island that seems, at first glance, unsuitable for permanent settlement. So where does this freshwater come from, and why isn't it swallowed by the surrounding sea? Horseshoe Bay unfolds like a ribbon of pink embracing the deep blue waters of the Atlantic Ocean. Yet its beauty is not a random gift of nature, but the result of a process that has unfolded over thousands of years. Unlike beaches formed primarily from quartz, the sand at Horseshoe Bay originates from the very coral reef ecosystem surrounding Bermuda. Over time, ocean waves grind fragments of white coral into fine particles and mix them with the pink-red shells of a tiny organism called Homotrema rubrum, a hard-shelled species that lives attached to coral reefs. With every wave, these fragments are broken down into ever finer grains of sand. The proportion of white coral to the reddish shells varies from place to place, causing the sand to range from off-white to pale pink, appearing especially vibrant in the morning sunlight or just after the tide has receded. What makes this pink color remarkable is that it is not merely a surface coating. It exists within each individual grain of sand. As a result, even though powerful waves and storms continually reshape the beach, its distinctive pink hue always returns as part of the island's natural cycle. What makes Horseshoe Bay truly unique is not only its rare color, but the way an entire marine ecosystem quietly creates one of Bermuda's most iconic landscapes, one wave at a time. Perhaps Bermuda's greatest secret has never been found in its legends, but has always existed within the island's own natural world. A violent storm drove the Sea Venture onto Bermuda's coral reefs. What seemed like a disaster became the beginning of permanent settlement on a small island in the middle of the Atlantic. The survivors quickly realized that Bermuda was unlike any land they had ever known. There were no rivers to provide fresh water, no vast stretches of fertile soil, and no abundant food supply capable of sustaining a large community. To survive, they had no choice but to adapt to the island's natural environment. Rainwater became their most precious resource. The first homes were built from local limestone, with sloping roofs designed to capture every rainfall and channel it into storage tanks below. At the same time, the surrounding waters rich in fish, the coral reefs, and the coastal land provided the food that helped the settlers endure their difficult early years. From a group of shipwreck survivors, St. George's gradually grew into England's first permanent settlement in the New World. It proved that even an island that seemed to lack almost everything could become a place where people built lasting lives by learning to live in harmony with nature. What saved the first settlers was neither treasure nor a miracle. It was their ability to understand the natural world and make use of every limited resource Bermuda had to offer. As life gradually became more stable, another question emerged. How could this small yet strategically important island be defended? Today, Fort St. Catherine overlooks the sea in peaceful silence. But for centuries, it served as Bermuda's first line of defense against every threat approaching from the Atlantic. This raises an important question. Why did such a small island require such formidable protection? The answer lies in Bermuda's geographic location. Situated near the major shipping routes linking Europe and the Americas, the island became an ideal resupply point for vessels crossing the Atlantic. Controlling Bermuda meant controlling a vital link in the British Empire's commercial and military networks. Originally built in the early 17th century and expanded over successive generations, Fort St. Catherine was designed to guard the eastern approach to the archipelago. Its massive stone walls, seaward-facing gun batteries, and overlapping fields of fire formed a defensive barrier that kept enemy warships at a distance. What is particularly remarkable is that the very coral reefs that once endangered passing ships became the fortress's natural ally. They forced hostile vessels into narrow channels already covered by the cannons positioned along the cliffs. Bermuda was not defended by walls and artillery alone. Nature and human ingenuity combined to create a defensive system that made the island a virtually impregnable fortress in the middle of the ocean. Yet military strength was only the beginning. It was the harbors behind these fortifications that truly transformed Bermuda's destiny. Hamilton Harbor appears to be little more than a peaceful bay lined with low-rise buildings. Yet it holds the answer to why Bermuda has become one of the most prosperous economies in the Atlantic. For centuries, Hamilton Harbor served as a resupply port for ships preparing to cross the Atlantic. But as the era of great naval fleets gradually came to an end, Bermuda was forced to find an entirely new path to survival. The island possessed neither gold, nor oil, nor fertile farmland. Instead, its greatest assets were its strategic location, political stability, and a legal system built over generations. Today, the buildings overlooking Hamilton Harbor no longer serve merchant fleets. They house the headquarters of numerous insurance, reinsurance, and international financial services companies. Rather than exporting goods, Bermuda exports financial services around the world, transforming a small island in the middle of the ocean into a vital link in the global economy. Here, Bermuda has demonstrated that prosperity does not necessarily depend on natural resources. Sometimes, a nation's greatest advantage lies in its ability to make the most of its geographic location and adapt to a changing world. What makes Hamilton Harbor remarkable is not the number of ships entering its port, but the way a harbor once dedicated to trade evolved into the center of a modern economy. Yet long before it became a commercial hub, Bermuda was a place where powerful nations competed for control. If Fort St. Catherine was Bermuda's shield, then the Royal Naval Dockyard was the heart of British naval power in the Atlantic. It is remarkable that a base of such scale was built on an island covering only about 21 square miles. After securing control of Bermuda, Britain quickly recognized the island's strategic value. Ships crossing the Atlantic needed a place where they could be repaired, resupplied, and reorganized before continuing to North America or the Caribbean. Bermuda occupied the ideal position to fulfill that role. In the early 19th century, construction of the Royal Naval Dockyard began on the limestone bedrock at the western tip of the archipelago. Over the following decades, thousands of workers expanded the harbor, built shipyards, ammunition depots, repaired docks, and defensive fortifications, transforming it into Britain's largest naval base in the Western Atlantic. From the dockyard, the Royal Navy could control vital shipping lanes, protect maritime trade, and deploy its forces whenever conflict erupted. Bermuda was no longer simply an island in the ocean. It had become a strategic link in the maritime network of an empire that stretched across the globe. After its military role came to an end, the Royal Naval Dockyard was transformed into a tourist destination, a marina, and a cultural center. This demonstrates that Bermuda did not leave its past behind, but instead turned its historical legacy into a vital part of its modern economy. As its military significance gradually faded into history, these very harbors paved the way for a new era of prosperity. On the map, Castle Harbor appears to be little more than a small bay. Yet in the history of the Atlantic, it was here that an unexpected maritime disaster became the beginning of a new civilization. In the summer of 1609, the Sea Venture, operated by the Virginia Company, was carrying settlers to Jamestown when it was caught in a powerful storm in the middle of the Atlantic. After days of battling the raging sea, the captain deliberately ran the ship onto the coral reefs near Castle Harbor to save everyone on board. What seemed to be the end of the voyage instead marked an entirely new beginning. During the months they were stranded on the island, The survivors harvested native Bermuda cedar, caught seafood, and built 2 new ships to continue their journey. More importantly, they discovered that Bermuda was not the worthless wilderness many had believed it to be. News of the island quickly reached England. Just a few years later, the first permanent settlers returned, laying the foundations of the Bermuda colony and beginning more than 4 centuries of continuous human settlement across the archipelago. Had the Sea Venture not run aground at Castle Harbor, Bermuda might have remained little more than a forgotten name on maritime charts instead of becoming home to tens of thousands of people. But for this young community to endure, it first had to overcome an even greater challenge: defending the island. In the middle of the North Atlantic, Bermuda is little more than a tiny speck surrounded by a vast ocean. Yet this island proves that even a place with few natural advantages can become home to a thriving community through resilience and the ability to adapt. And perhaps the most unforgettable stories always begin in the smallest places. The journey of discovery still holds many stories yet to be told.